Good morning.
Good morning.
Idaho Falls. I am Annette Lovell. I am your worship associate today, bringing you the service with the Reverend Kevin Carson and our media tech, Vic Allen. So there are some new faces, and we welcome you whether this is your first time finding us or you're a longtime friend or member. We welcome you if you come with troubles or concerns and you're trying to find some answers to soothe your soul. We welcome you if you're just looking for a new way of thought or direction, a seeker of faith or learning. Whatever your reason and wherever you are on your spiritual journey today, we welcome you this beautiful Sunday morning. We always like to start our service with a few announcements. There are very few today. So first of all, if you are online, welcome, and please sign into the chat box so that we know you're here and you are participating. We can just see who's joining us. And if you have a joy or concern online, please put it in your chat box very soon. If you're here in the sanctuary, there are papers at the back of the sanctuary where you can write your joys and concerns, and we will share those later in the service. Instead of coffee hour, today we are going to be having a picnic outside in the Peace Garden. So hopefully you brought a chair or a picnic we can share outside to welcome in the new church year, which is fall to early summer. If not, go grab something and come on back. And hopefully we can have a meal together. Also, quick reminder, silence your cell phones. It's no fun when they interrupt a service. And today is the first time we're having children's religious education again after the summer break. So midway through the service, the children will be invited to go upstairs, and youth. But if you'd like to stay in the service today, that is also totally all right, okay? Are there any other announcements? Okay, we're going to turn over a few moments to Molly Brinkerhoff.
Good morning. We are now at the beginning of our stewardship campaign. Since we are a totally self-sufficient church, this is our time to raise money to pay for our expenses in 2024. Last night, we had our kickoff up party. While it wasn't well attended, it was a lot of fun with delicious food and lots of dancing. We had a great time and wish more people had joined us. I do want quickly, before I get into the why I give, is I wanted to thank Catherine and Arthur, who are on the committee with me, for helping put together the event last night. Catherine came up with the wonderful theme of up and decorations, but I would also like to thank all who helped with setup, cleanup last night. A special thanks to Rhonda, Steve, Rosie, Bill, and Judy, and I'm sorry if I missed anybody on that. So, to get to the point, why do I give to this church? There are for many reasons, and much of it is for gratitude. I'm grateful for a minister. Having done many worship services myself, I know how hard it is to put together a meaningful service. Putting one together week after week is not something I can do. So I appreciate those who can. I'm grateful for our community, a place I can come knowing that I will be with others who are looking for an alternative to other theologies in our area. I'm grateful for a place I feel safe, because we provide an open church for people with different sensibilities. Our congregation comprises of humanists, pagan-leaning individuals, Buddhist individuals, atheists, and even Christian-leaning people who want a diverse experience. And I would hate for this to disappear. And I'm also grateful that we have a building which provides a haven for all of us and all of our activities. However, None of this will be possible if we don't raise enough funds to run our little church in 2024. So I would like to make a special appeal to those watching virtually. We need you to pledge as well if you are a regular watcher. To continue providing streaming services, we need your pledges. And to pledge, please contact our Unitarian Universalist Church in Idaho Falls Administrative Office. And for those of you here, think about giving generously this year. We are shrinking a little bit due to, unfortunately, people having to move away or passing away in other reasons. But so think about why you value this place and why that might make you want to pledge. Thank you.
So the pledge campaign is going to be going on for the next, 3 or 4 weeks? Yeah, throughout the next month. So with those thoughts, we will prepare for worship with a few moments to just settle in, calm our minds and our breathing. Let us breathe deeply together, and I will ring our peace bowl to bring us together 3 times. Chose our words for our covenant. And we recite them every week to remind us how to live certain principles. So please join with me with this recitation. It is printed in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And Reverend Kevin will help us light the chalice this morning. The chalice, or the lighting of our chalice, is another ritual that we take very seriously. We light a chalice for every service, every special meeting, even certain community gatherings where we're wanting to keep a sacredness about the work that we are doing. So our chalice lighting today was written by Charles Howe. He says, "We light this chalice to affirm that new light is ever waiting to break through to enlighten our ways. That new truth is ever waiting to break through to illumine our minds. And that new love is ever waiting to break through to warm our hearts. May we be open to this light and to the rich possibilities that it brings us."
Good morning. Our call to worship this morning comes from Patricia Schutte. You and I and all of us blew about with the winds of summer, following the sun in different ways of freedom and play, finding rest in the cool stillness of shadows and moving to the slow, heat-struck rhythms which turned the long hours of summer light. Now it is the time for gathering in. We come together at this time and in this place on the bridge of autumn. Summer is fading backward into memory, and winter waits in snowy brilliance. We meet with eagerness and delight, needing one another for sharing. We have joys and sorrows and hopes to share, questions, things we care about and want to help make better, things we would like to understand, ideas waiting to be heard. Today we are together in gladness, once more the special community that we call our church, a community of all ages that sings its songs, tells its thoughts, asks its questions, and searches together with courage and with love. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 360, Here We Have Gathered.
Here we have gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Here we have gathered, called to celebrate days of our lifetime, matters small and great. We of all ages, women, children, men, infants and sages, sharing what we can. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Life has its battles, sorrows and regret, but in the shadows let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's pain. Kindness can heal us, as we give we gain. Sing now in friendship this our heart's own song.
We will now celebrate this time of ingathering with our water ceremony, sometimes called water communion. It is a way for members and friends to join us in a ritual that celebrates our return to community, and the mingling of waters seems a very appropriate symbolic act. Long before we knew that life emerged from Earth's primordial seas, human beings understood our vital relationship with water. From a practical standpoint, water is, of course, essential to the process of life to function. But our connection to water has also evoked deep spiritual feelings across the ages. Among the religious traditions, water has symbolized motion, renewal, blessing, intuition, fertility, purification, transition, transformation, wisdom, and life itself. Water flows and conforms. Water transforms from liquid to solid to vapor and back again. It is an ever-present and ready metaphor for transformation and the changing experience of living. As we join our waters in our ceremony this morning, let us be mindful of the life-giving gift of water and the symbolic gift of how water is important to us or has touched our lives over the summer. I now invite each of you to come forward and join your water. If you did not bring water, please take a ladle of the symbolic water from the ceramic bowl and add it to the glass bowl. And if you're joining us online, you're invited to ask for us to share water for you. If you like, please briefly tell us about the significance of the water you wish to share. So I invite you now to come forward and share your waters.
Tom and I have gotten into kayaking, and this is water from Big Springs, and just the joy of being out in nature and even seeing the little things like the little fish or a muskrat is as exciting as seeing a moose.
I put in water from my new distiller, which is going to give me pure water for my little indoor plants.
I don't think I have any special reason, but
My water comes from the South Fork of the Snake River, where we have been able to float a few times this summer, including about a 9-hour float yesterday. So it's full of all kinds of wonderful life forms.
Hello, I'm Courtney. My daughter is about 12, and we did a lot with water this year, specifically skipping rocks and enjoying the river. And so just our memories with water throughout this year, I think that's a good reason to add it.
After being born and raised here in Idaho Falls the last 17 years, me and my family have been in Kansas City and came back this summer. So this is water from my mom's house as a representation of coming back home. So.
Everywhere I will have been on water is a special place and for some reason a special memory. But there's just so many of them, and it's so important right now. And since I lived a lot of my life in Utah, things like the Great Salt Lake, it really, really matters. So here's to all the wonderful mountain water places that we all got to know when we were younger and older.
I put in some water from the 5 wells of Rexburg, and I hope they stay full.
Well, for me, this summer has been a medical summer, and I had two 2-hour-long eye surgeries to repair my retina, and so this water symbolizes all the water that has been used to flush my eyes.
As a kidney transplant recipient, I'm acutely aware of the importance of water for our health. But this water today I'd like to dedicate. Now, Mary and I don't get out much. Well, wasn't me. Mary and I don't get out a lot much at this point. We're both having some medical issues. So this water for me is, might as well be saline. I'm with Arthur. I've spent a lot of time in medical offices the last year. And so this is my salute to all the people who've dedicated their lives to becoming doctors and technicians and all the rest of the people I've had contact with, literally dozens of them in the last year within the medical community.
As a teacher of astrobiology, I can tell you that water is the essential element for the beginnings of life.
Well, the water I just added is symbolic of Yellowstone Lake, which we finally took the boat ride on this summer and got to see the Yellowstone from the water for the first time instead of just driving around the lake every time we've been there. So it's fascinating just to see these bodies of water, and especially knowing you're sitting on top of a giant volcano at the same time, and it's also all the fumaroles and geysers and other geological geothermal features in the park that just is fascinating. I love the geology around here. So that's for all the waters of Yellowstone. Any others? Okay. Well, I invite you now to sit quietly for a few moments and calm the turbulent waters of life, at least for a time, and let us commune in silence with the deep, still waters of the Spirit of life. Amen. Well, we will now have our blessing of the backpack. So, Marty, if you want to come up here. Like we did last year for the first time, we celebrate the beginning of a new school year once again with a special ceremony that is becoming popular in many churches around the country. It's the blessing of the backpacks. And don't worry if you didn't bring your actual backpack today. So, And I want to acknowledge that this ceremony was adapted from one created by the Reverend Nell Newton, who is currently the assistant minister of the First UU Church in San Antonio, Texas. So now I invite all who are students to come forward. You can bring your backpacks if you like, or leave them in the pews for later. So if you'd like to come forward, if you're students. And this applies to youth as well as children, so don't be shy. Or if you're just young at heart and want to, just kind of stand right here is fine. Yeah, we're not very formal, so. Hey, all right. So, that's your part.
This is the start of the new school year, and both students and teachers might be feeling many things. They might be excited, a little bit scared. What if no one wants to be their friend? What if it's all too much and I can't keep up? What if the numbers and the letters don't make sense? What if people are mean to me? I want you all to know that both students and teachers are thinking these things. But I also want you to know that everyone here believes that you are an amazing person, and we are excited to watch you as you learn and grow and change the world by learning and teaching one another. So, to that end, we are making some promises to you. We promise to be interested in what you are learning and how you are growing. If you have trouble at school, if you are scared or worried, we are here to listen to you. We will be here all year long. Got it? If so, answer, I got it. All right. Is it your turn now?
So, to the congregation, please say with me the words of affirmation and blessing in your order of service. Ready? May these backpacks be useful to you as you start the new year. May your homework always be finished on time. May your permission notes always be signed the night before. May your textbooks not fall into a mud puddle. May your favorite pencil or pen always be easy to find. When you don't understand, may you have the courage to ask questions. And finally, may you always know that we love you. Blessed be. So before you go back to your seat or off to the classes if you choose, please take one of these little charms. This year we have, where do you want you to pass them out? These are little tree of life charms that I found, and so they're strung on it is a faux leather string for people who are concerned about such things. So it's made out of polyester on the string, but it looks like suede. So you can use it as a zipper pull or just put it in your back. And this is to remind you of the blessing that you received today. And if you're online or couldn't make it for some reason, we have extras. So just let Marty know in the future if you need one, and we'll be glad to get one to you. Or if you lose yours, we can replace it pretty easily. I think I've got 50 to choose from, so I think we've got plenty. All right, we'll now sing out the children.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
Do we have any joys and concerns in the chat box? Good. Okay. Well, this is our time that we share our joys and concerns with one another so that we can connect together. It's important when you only see each other for a time that this is when we can actually let people know what's going on in our lives and how we're feeling. So Kevin will light a candle for each. We have Judy Stanley, who has a joy. She says, "Thank you for all involved with the party last night. It was great food and fun." And Courtney says, "My special needs student made some excellent progress in communication, transitions, and in emotional regulations this week." So that's worth celebrating for sure. And I also have a joy. I started a new job about a month ago, and Friday night as I came home from work, I was sitting there pondering and realized that in the past month, not once had I snapped at anybody, had I felt anger, rage, unable to cope, highs and lows of depression, and I thought, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is why I needed to make a change. So for the courage to make changes when change is hard, and for new opportunities and new jobs. We also light one more candle for all of those joys and concerns which we choose not to share at this time.
At the General Assembly of our denomination last summer, we elected a new president. And so today, I'd like to share a short video message from Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, who is the new UUA president, welcoming us back to this Ingathering Sunday.
Beloveds, it brings me great joy to welcome you into this season of return, when we celebrate ingatherings and come back to each other in our congregations and our communities writ large. For me personally, this is a time of return to our Unitarian Universalist Association, and I am humbled by your trust in me as your president. Thank you for the love and support you have shown me, not just during last year's presidential campaign, but during General Assembly in Pittsburgh. Thank you, UUs. We are at the start of our shared ministry together, and we have been invited to consider a whole new way of visioning and resourcing our UUA. Our Commission on Institutional Change has invited us into a type of collaboration that we have not yet fully envisioned. This is work that I cannot do without you, certainly work that I cannot do without our remarkable UUA staff, and I am looking forward to all that we will accomplish together. Beloveds, this is a time to think about and reflect on the call of Unitarian Universalism in these days. Who are we meant to be collectively? And how do we care for one another along the way? In this coming year, once again, we get to lean into our shared values and talk about and discuss and chew on how we express those together as we come back to the next year of work on Article 2. More than just bylaws, however, it matters how we story ourselves into being. Those messages will guide us in our work to come. In this year, we are responding to the call of justice in our nation and around the globe. Beloveds, I know these are difficult times. I know that we are sometimes afraid. I know that we need one another, that there is strength in religious community, and that progressive religious community is called to be a counter-cultural response to what can seem like the inevitable outcome of society today. We believe in human goodness. It is a radical idea. Our liberal tradition guides us toward liberation because we become more free when we are in this work together, when we promote our values together, when we lead together. I want to invite you to sit with me in reflection on all that Unitarian Universalism is called to be in these days. How are you asked? How are you inspired to live your faith in the world? What does your congregation, this community, specialize in? Where is your mission most needed in the surrounding community? And how do we care for one another as we go? Loves, we are called to communal care like never before. We see this in this time when we are re-emerging from the quarantine stage of pandemic. And let me take a moment to say, wow, did we hold one another beautifully and well in these last years. Please let us not lose the lessons we learned about how to hold one another in care, how to protect the health of all, how to center the needs of those most vulnerable among us, so that community writ large continues. What have you learned in these recent years? How are you sharing those learnings with other UUs and with other members of your community? This is the work of communal care as we steward this faith together. Beloveds, I am grateful for each and every one of you. As I said, I cannot do this work alone. This is work we do together. And I cannot do this remarkable ministry without your phenomenal UUA staff. I want to ask you to treat your leaders, leaders of all kinds, religious professionals, lay leaders, elders, youth, emerging adults, all those who shape us in new ways. Hold your leaders with love. We are all tired. Much is asked of us, and there are wonderful things yet to come. Together, we will reimagine the workings and expressions of this faith, and we will hold on to the traditions and theologies and commitments that have made us who we are. This is beloved community. This is communal care in a season of return. I can't wait to continue this ministry with all of you. Be well, beloveds.
An offering to support the mission of this church will now be given and gratefully received. Today, the first Sunday after the Labor Day holiday, has become known as Ingathering Sunday in our Unitarian Universalist tradition. It is a time when we begin a new church year, and schools are back in session, the time of year when summer comes to an end and cooler mornings herald the beginning of fall. The other day, Facebook reminded me that 3 years ago, it was cold and wet here over the Labor Day holiday in the 30s, with even a little snow in the mountains. In just a couple of weeks, it will be the annual fall equinox, when astronomical fall begins in the northern hemisphere, and we have already entered the so-called meteorological fall, which began on September 1st. This has always been one of my favorite times of the year, when the weather may swing between summer and fall for a time as if the days can't make up their minds, and sometimes even a bit of winter drops by for a visit. In UU churches across America this morning, chalices will be lit, and many water ceremonies will take place. And in a growing number of churches, there will be blessings of the backpacks. The start of a new church year is a time for familiar rituals. We humans seem to crave rituals of all sorts, whether sacred or mundane. Athletes often have special pre-game rituals that they hope will bring success. And even our daily morning routine can become a string of simple rituals, perhaps culminating in how we prepare and drink our morning coffee. Our brains are hardwired for pattern recognition, so I am sure this has a lot to do with it. When we celebrate holidays with traditional rituals, like setting up a Christmas tree or we blow out the candles on a birthday cake, our memories and feelings from prior years inevitably well up and remind us about who we are and what we have experienced in our lives, good or bad. And when rituals are imbued with a sense of sacredness in the practice of religion, they take on a deep spiritual significance. Rituals become a means to acknowledge what is holy in our lives and to reinforce our sense of religious identity. Ritual is, in fact, one of the most distinguishing characteristics of religion, and sometimes it is the most important element. It is extremely important in a sacramental tradition like the Roman Catholic Church, which is also a high liturgical tradition with worship services that incorporate ancient rituals which have been practiced much the same for 2,000 years, and sometimes have even deeper roots in Jewish and Roman pagan traditions. For Roman Catholics, sacraments such as baptism, confession, and partaking of the Eucharist or communion during worship are important rituals required of all believers. Ritual is also the most important element in some Eastern and neo-pagan religious practices. As long as humans have expressed our spirituality through religion, there have been rituals. Sometimes simple and sometimes quite elaborate. In some cultures, there are rituals which take place over the course of several days. Wonderful festivals have evolved in many places that celebrate the sacred with feasts, special clothing, and other forms of expression. Incorporating all the human senses of sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. Rituals aimed at transcending the ordinariness of daily life. Whole villages or towns may partake in a religious festival in parts of the world where there is little religious diversity. And in other places, ethnic communities may celebrate their heritage with street festivals and parades that include religious overtones. It is common, for example, for some Catholic communities in America to celebrate their strong sense of European heritage with festivals honoring a favorite saint from the Old World, including a procession of the saint's statue from their local church paraded around the neighborhood. We saw a lot of these when we lived in Rhode Island among our Italian and Portuguese ancestry neighbors. And the traditional foods at these festivals were always fantastic. Usually they raised a substantial amount of money to support a local Catholic church or charity as a result. Most rituals, however, are simpler and more personal. For one of my classes in seminary, I observed for several hours at the Sri Lakshmi Hindu Temple in Ashland, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. The temple was built in 1984 to serve the growing Hindu population in the Boston area, largely thanks to the many colleges and universities in the region. It was fascinating to see people come and go with offerings of butter or milk, often with little fanfare or even a gesture that would be recognizable as religious, such as a bow or a namaste. Mothers accompanied by children usually let them run amok in the temple while they made their offering. In this beautiful building filled with large gilded stone idols representing Hindu gods and goddesses, people would sometimes plop down a plastic jug of milk fresh from the convenience store, still in its plastic grocery bag, at the base of an idol, and then unceremoniously leave. Others might pour the milk over an idol or jam sticks of butter into the idols wherever they could. All of this was part of the Hindu practice of puja, making a ritual offering of thanksgiving or petition to a deity. Near the entrance of the temple, there was even a posted price list for various rituals the priest could perform for you, such as a car blessing. I was able to witness one of the temple priests conducting a car blessing in the parking lot while I was there, featuring a pan of incense and chanting. Everything was very straightforward. There was nothing like a Sunday worship service that we would recognize. The rituals were the expression of their religion. In the Western religious tradition from which our Unitarian Universalist faith emerged, the form of our worship services reflects ancient roots, as I mentioned, but some of the rituals were created much later or evolved over time to reflect changing doctrines and beliefs. Among Protestant denominations, for example, the ritual of the Eucharist, also known as communion, or the Lord's Supper, is no longer considered as important. Catholic doctrine about communion includes a supernatural element known as transubstantiation, the idea that the communion wafer and wine are transformed into the body and blood of Christ when they are consecrated. But for Protestants, the ritual is considered to be symbolic. It is a remembrance of the Last Supper. These days, only a few UU churches in America still celebrate traditional communion with bread and wine, and even those that do don't make it a weekly practice during worship. Some churches practice a cider and bread communion around Thanksgiving or some other reimagined rituals. Many UU churches also call the water ceremony ritual we perform today water communion, since it brings together all of us symbolically. Rituals evolve, but to remain relevant, they must retain a sense of sacred connection and be recognizable within a group. If they do not, they may become extinct. The rituals we regularly perform in most UU worship services are included in a traditional Protestant structure of worship that has been nicknamed a hymn sandwich, readings and other rituals sandwiched between a series of hymns or other rituals or other music. It is very familiar to most of us who grew up in any American religious tradition. For Protestants, the sermon became the focal point of the worship service. The word was seen as more important than ritual or sacrament. And this remains the case. But even UUs appreciate some ritual and elements. Just think of the sequence of rituals we have performed today. After our announcements and testimonial to kick off our pledge drive, we rang the peace bowl and enjoyed the musical prelude, basking in sounds that can evoke powerful emotions. We then read our covenant aloud and again surrounded ourselves with the sound of the human voices of our fellow worshipers. We then lit our chalice, hearing words to sacralize the moment, and seeing the flame of the chalice, perhaps even smelling the fire emerge. Next, we heard more words and sang our opening hymn together. Then we celebrated a special ritual of the water ceremony designed to bring us closer together in community. This was followed by another special ritual, the blessing of the backpacks, something less common in UU circles but growing in popularity. Next, as we do almost every Sunday, we shared the joys, concerns, and sorrows of our faith community, and I will speak more about how this ritual has evolved in a moment. Then we heard a message from our UUA president, what the ancient Christian churches would have called an apostolic letter. like the letters of Paul to the early churches. It is another ritual that goes back millennia. The offering, too, was a ritual, a practice that helped sustain the work of the church. And last, then came the sermon, a ritual that engages me in preparation for many hours each week before delivering it during worship. After I finish speaking, we will sing again, hear some closing words, extinguish our chalice to symbolize the close of our sacred time this morning, and enjoy one last musical postlude to transition us out of worship. Lots of rituals. A couple were special ones we do once a year, but mostly it was a familiar sequence of symbolic gestures that have meaning to us as Unitarian Universalists. If this is your first experience of a Unitarian Universalist Sunday service, some of the rituals may not seem as meaningful yet. But this is something that changes us in us after we become more familiar with any religious organization. One of the key features of religious ritual is that it becomes more sacred and meaningful through repetition. Last month, I gave a series of sermons on the long history of our Unitarian Universalist faith, but I also acknowledged that Unitarian Universalism in its contemporary form is a relative newcomer among the world's religions, with its official beginning in the 1961 merger of the Unitarians and Universalists into our present denomination. 62 years is the blink of an eye in the development of religious rituals and symbols. But we, of course, retain a lot from our parent denominations in terms of our worship structure and in the rites of passage we do, such as child dedications, marriages, and memorial services. But some uniquely UU rituals and symbols have already started to enjoy a familiar feel no matter where you visit one of our congregations. The most common ritual you are likely to see is the lighting of a chalice, although there may yet be a handful of UU churches remaining that do not light one. I know of at least one that only began lighting a chalice around 2010. The flaming chalice symbol itself was created during World War II by the Austrian artist Hans Deutsch for the Unitarian Service Committee working in Europe. Over the next few decades, the symbol and the physical chalice became popular among Unitarian Universalists, though as our denominational website describes, Unitarian Universalists today have many different interpretations of the flaming chalice, including the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. I think it is okay that we have diverse interpretations of the symbolic meaning of the chalice, since we are a very theologically diverse faith. But it is not yet a symbol that is easily recognized by those outside our faith, or even understood consistently within our own churches. Other rituals, like the water ceremony, which appears to have become popular since the 1980s, have even had less time to become universally meaningful across our congregations. As I mentioned earlier, the sharing of joys and concerns was one of those rituals we do most Sundays that is expressed in a variety of forms and continues to evolve even within a single church. Even the name is sometimes joys and concerns and sometimes joys and sorrows, depending on the church, and the practice varies greatly. In some churches, people come forward to light candles themselves before or during the service, and sometimes speak their own joy or concern. This may work well in small congregations, but you can imagine the challenge it could present in a larger one. So even before the COVID pandemic, it was becoming more common to write them in a book or on paper slips to speed things up. Another popular practice has been the use of small stones to slip in a basin of water instead of lighting candles. Sometimes a church will do one thing during the regular church year and something different during the summer months. And this is one ritual that frequently evolves in a congregation over time. Here in Idaho Falls, we began using the slips of paper during COVID, and so far we feel this is a good form of the ritual to continue. Who knows, we may try something else someday. And as I said, religious rituals evolve, but they must retain enough that is recognizable to have sacred meaning. Another regular worship ritual that we ended during COVID was greeting your neighbors during the service. It is an old and meaningful ritual that reinforces the social bonds that make the community of faith. It has always been one of my favorites, so when the time is safe for us to resume, I hope we will do so. With the new COVID variant on the upswing, I think we are just not there yet. It can be hard for us to change and adapt our worship rituals, since we like to hold on to the familiar. But circumstances can sometimes force us to do so. And since we're a diverse faith that is more willing than many others to embrace change, sometimes it is good to experiment and create new rituals. I've already mentioned a few rituals we perform as you use outside of worship, such as child dedications, marriages, and memorial services. These are important rituals that we do to mark the significant events in our human life and to acknowledge the grief of losing a loved one. And of course, there are many private rituals we might do as individuals to deepen our spirituality and connect with our community and the interdependent web of all existence. Just saying a table grace before a meal to express gratitude, or lighting a candle for a loved one, can add meaning to our lives. Setting aside time for prayer or meditation is a worthy ritual as well. I have heard ritual described as something that symbolically connects us with the ineffable or unobservable, but I don't think this has to be the case. It is certainly part of the purpose of ritual, but I also affirm rituals that connect us with the mundane, to imbue ordinary things with the sacredness they deserve. Rituals that connect us with the source of our food, or with nature, for example. So let us bask in the rituals that give our lives more meaning and satisfy our human need for connecting our intellects, emotions, senses, and bodies in sacred practices. As we grow spiritually, as a religious movement, let us create rituals that transcend our own lifetimes and give them to the generations to come. I invite you now to rise again in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 100, I've Got Peace Like a River.
I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got tears like raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul.
Our closing words come from John Ruskin. There is religion in everything around us, a calm and holy religion in the unbreathing things of nature. It is a meek and blessed influence, stealing in us as if it were unaware upon the heart. It comes quickly and without excitement. It has no terror, no gloom. It does not rouse up the passions. It is untrammeled by creeds. It is written on the arched sky. It looks out from every star. It is on the sailing cloud and the invisible wind. It is among the hills and valleys of the earth, where the shrubless mountaintop pierces the thin atmosphere of eternal winter, or where the mighty forest fluctuates before the strong wind with its dark waves of green foliage. It is spread out like a legible language upon the broad face of an unsleeping ocean. It is the poetry of nature. It is that which uplifts the spirit within us and which opens to our imagination a world of spiritual beauty and holiness.
We will now extinguish our chalice with the words written in your order of service. Please join me as I read them. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. It is time for our postlude. Be safe and be well.